Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. So what is the title of the show today? Today, the title of the show is Ian Reifowitz, the Tribalization of Politics on the Limbaugh race-baiting rhetoric. That's just the title. Professor and author Ian Reifowitz discusses his new book, The Tribalization of Politics, how Rush Limbaugh's race-baiting rhetoric on the Obama presidency paved the way for Trump. Anyhow, Rush Limbaugh is a cancer on our politics. American politics is in disarray. One of the reasons for that is the caustic nature of our dialogue, driven by insincere ideologues like Rush Limbaugh. Professor and author Ian Reifowitz deconstructs how Rush Limbaugh, typo in there, Rush Limbaugh and other corrosive discourse and false narratives were instrumental in the election of Donald Trump. After we have that interview with Ian, we're going to talk a few issues. Specifically, I want to go over a Common Dreams article titled, Citing Fears of American Getting Screwed. Progressive Democrats call out Pelosi for crafting pharma-friendly drug pricing bill in secret. Folks, we have a lot of work to do. You wonder why I say just about every single day, no matter what topic I cover, we are going to be also talking about Medicare for all. There's a reason for that. The reason for that is the powers that be, the pharmaceuticals, the insurance agents, what I call, and the entire hospital industrial complex, I call in general, the healthcare industrial complex is really pilfering us all. It has many of our politicians bought, including those that we think or that we consider so strong, and they know how things work around government. What they mean is they know how to balance what the plutocracy wants with what the people will accept. That's not what we want. We want what is right for Americans. We want what is right for your health care. We want what is right for you to be able to accumulate what's your worth. Right now, we have a hell of a lot of people using you as widgets. We have a hell of a lot of people using you as their method of funding themselves, doing very little as they use your intellect, as they use your work, as they use your worth. But without further ado, my friends, let's get to Ian, because Ian also in his book, which I urge everyone to get, that is this book here called The Tribalization of Politics. I love the way he deconstructs what's going on in this country, and also the suggestions that he would have that says, hey guys, this is what we have to do. So without further ado, my friends, let's go ahead and have that interview with Ian. I'm here with Ian Reifowitz. This is our second iteration. The first time we had Ian on the show, Ian wanted to make sure to score me up on issues about Jewish sensitivity. He did a great job at that. Well, today he's here with his new book titled The Tribalization of Politics, how Rush Limbaugh's race-baiting rhetoric on the Obama presidency paved the way for Trump. This is somebody we ought to listen to. Welcome aboard, Ian. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing very well, Alberto. Thank you again for having me on. It really is always a pleasure to talk to you, both on and off camera.
Absolutely, my friend. Anyhow, before we get started, I want to know what was in your psyche that caused you to write a book like this. First of all, let me tell you, it so well details the not only the marginalization, but the path to Trump based on what the right did. So tell me about how you decided to come about this book.
Well, I'll give you the brief path, which is that initially I had the idea of writing about Limbaugh's rhetoric on Obama. I had written my last book, Obama's America, which was looking at Obama's conception of national identity, which was very inclusive and unifying. But I had a section on critics of Obama who, let's say, did not like Obama's inclusiveness, let's say, and also didn't like the kinds of demographic changes that were coming in the country. And one of those critics I focused on was Limbaugh. So a few years after that, in 2015, I was thinking about doing another book, and this time I figured I'd look at it from the dark side, so to speak. So I started out planning on essentially doing a comprehensive look at Limbaugh's rhetoric on Obama. And as I was doing the research, Trump emerged. He wasn't really there when I had started. And by the time the book was finished, Trump had been elected. Actually, by the time the research was finished, Trump had been elected. And by the time the writing was done, we were into the Trump presidency. And I could see connections even more clearly than that, that Limbaugh's rhetoric on Obama, his attempt to scare white people about the black president, but also about demographic change, about immigration, cultural change more broadly, to really play and prey on white anxiety, that this was exactly the thing that Trump was doing, that he took it from talk radio, and also to some degree, it was the kind of thing he'd done his whole public life, going back to the Central Park Five in New York City, the five young men, some African American, I believe, and some Latino, who were falsely accused of a brutal rape. Trump has been doing this for a long time as well. So he and Limbaugh have been at this for decades. Limbaugh's rhetoric on Obama, however, really connects with this white anxiety.
I like the way you broke down the book specifically with your table of contents. Blackening the radical secret Muslim president. What exactly did that mean, and how did that actually work?
Right. Obviously, that's a little bit tongue-in-cheek. So Limbaugh wants to make sure that white Americans don't see Obama the way Obama wanted to present himself. Right? Obama wanted to present himself, and I believe was presenting this accurately, was presenting himself as somebody who was operating from the interests of America as a whole, from all the interests of all Americans, even as he's working to correct injustices. He's not positioning himself as a president for Black Americans only. Well, Limbaugh, it's in his interest and in the interest of conservatives to paint Obama as the president of Black Americans only, so that everybody who is not Black, or at least not a person of color, will look at Obama as somebody who's against their interests, right? It's a way of dividing the progressive coalition and or even turning independents or moderate conservatives against Obama. So he wants to, quote unquote, blacken him, paint him as a Black radical. And then the other side, or another side of that, was painting him as a Muslim in some way, or raising questions about him perhaps being a secret Muslim. I've got countless examples in the book of Limbaugh talking about how Obama, whether it's his background or the way he talks about Islam in the present day, simply the fact that he doesn't condemn Islam every day, 5 times a day, so to speak, that's enough in Limbaugh's mind for him to be seen as a secret Muslim. He talked about the fact that Obama mentioned that the call to prayer in Islam was one of the prettiest sounds he'd ever heard in his life. A nice, positive comment that a president might make in order to improve America's standing with the Islamic world. But Limbaugh says, "Oh, here, there's another example of Obama being a secret Muslim," and he always defends Islam, but he never defends Christianity. This is another one of Limbaugh's themes. We could go on and on. So he tries to blacken him by painting him as essentially a clone of, I guess, Angela Davis or Malcolm X. And then Malcolm X also connects to the Islam piece. I wasn't thinking along those lines, but yes, and he tries to paint him as some kind of Muslim radical, or at least sympathetic to Muslim radicals. All of this is to alienate as many people as possible, but in particular, white Christian Americans.
And then, isn't it true that he was trying to use the liberation theology from Jeremiah Wright in that realm as well?
Absolutely. That's another great example, right? And Jeremiah Wright is probably the one person who comes up most often for Limbaugh when talking about Obama. And this is one of the things he does with his audience. So he draws these characters, and they really are in a sense fictionalized characters.
Caricatures.
Right? Caricatures, yeah. So that he can just throw out a name and they know exactly what he's talking about. It's almost like listening to a soap opera. You know the characters. So he's taught, for example, after talking about Wright and Obama enough times, he can bring Wright up in any other conversation. He can just say, when talking about foreign policy, oh, and the chickens are coming home to roost. And his audience knows that that's a quote from Jeremiah Wright. And it's another way to remind them that Obama's a radical when it comes to foreign policy.
Absolutely. So now, inventing the anti-American president, I found that intriguing because here is one of the presidents that most embodied what the intent, not the intent, but the hope of what America could be. And he says, "This is who I am," and he turns that into he's anti-American.
That's right. Well, what Limbaugh does, and he does this in a subtle sort of way. He defines America as white America. He doesn't use that term directly, but he talks about traditional America and the America of the founders and America as exceptional. And it puts a particular version of America as America, and anybody who criticizes that as anti-American. So that's one. There's a rhetorical aspect to it. By talking about America's problems or whether it's issues of slavery or discrimination or by raising those issues, you're talking down America. Then in terms of the world and the global situation in foreign policy, he's one of the people who talked about Obama as constantly apologizing for America. He goes on an apology tour, as opposed to saying that, for example, as opposed to ignoring the American role in overthrowing the elected government of Iran under Mossadegh in 1953. He can acknowledge that, but he does that in Obama. He did that in a larger context of saying, yes, America has done this wrong and that wrong, but overall, America's impact on the world has been largely positive. And look at what America has done to sacrifice its in blood and treasure. But he doesn't ignore the negatives. And when Obama does that, the rest of the world says, okay, this is somebody we can deal with. He recognizes that America is not blameless, but he, by acknowledging its sins, so to speak, we can then see the positives as well. We can accept this guy as a truth teller. For Limbaugh, it's only black and white.
I like the way you said acknowledging. I like the word that for atoning for things atoning for many of the things that we've done. And I think again, Obama's been the embodiment of this act. This is who we are now. Look at what we are able to do. Now, moving forward, this title means to me, I guess when you talk about things like the beer summit or whatever, it gets to me, but I like the part, hating cops, but loving Black Lives Matter. I mean, what is more polarizing than making that analogy, that distinction, that disparity, if you will?
Right. So I have, in addition to the chapters we've previously mentioned, this chapter was focused really specifically on all the incidents of criminal justice and African Americans. Limbaugh goes after Obama essentially, as the chapter title suggests, somebody who hates the cops, but loves Black Lives Matter, loves the people who are out there protesting really for criminal justice reform, good things you would think, but Limbaugh is for Blue Lives Matter, but not Black Lives Matter. So this is another way of driving a wedge between Obama and the middle of the road whites or the moderately conservative whites that Limbaugh can reach, and without whom perhaps Obama doesn't get 52%, but instead gets 48%, just enough maybe. But even more than that, it's a way of motivating Limbaugh's own base, making sure that people who hate Obama but might not bother to vote go out and vote because they see what the stakes of it are. It's all about dividing, and as the title of the book really is about, it's about tribalizing America, dividing us into not political parties based on views on tax reform, but as tribes where the conservative white Christian tribe sees everybody in the other tribe, which is headed by Obama during these years, as an enemy, a cultural and racial enemy out to destroy them.
I want this book to be read not only by those who are Obama supporters, those who are Democrats or whatever. I want, and I have a whole lot of conservative listeners as well, I want conservatives to take up this book for a specific reason. Because when we're talking about a certain pathology, Ian, when you're in the midst of it, you don't quite know you're into it, because these are all, they prey on how the mind works. They prey on that part of the mind that says, I've got to protect myself. And what they're asking you to protect against is really a mirage. It's not really something there. You want to expand on that before we move on to the other chapter?
Absolutely. I mean, it's about activating fear. Let me read you just one example of that Limbaugh used. This is from June 4th, 2009, very early in the Obama presidency, before even any of the major racial incidents that we start with in the summer of 2009, which was the Henry Louis Gates arrest. So let me just read this to you. This is from Limbaugh. Obama lives and breathes and believes the things that he says because that's what he's been taught about this country. His wife, ditto. And those people are all enraged. They're all angry. The days of them not having any power are over, and they are angry. And they want to use their power as a means of retribution. That's what Obama's about, gang. He's angry. He's going to cut this country down to size. He's going to make it pay for all the multicultural mistakes it has made, its mistreatment of minorities. That is a passage designed to get people afraid and angry. And in reaction to that, Jamel Gouy, who is one of the really insightful public commentators out there, he writes for the New York Times now, in response to that passage, he wrote, "You can draw a direct line to the rise of Trump from the racial hysteria of talk radio, where Rush Limbaugh, a Trump booster, warned that Obama would turn the world upside down," end quote. That June 4th paragraph from Limbaugh is the worst of many examples I could have cited for you, and I do cite in the book.
And that is amazing, because yes, it makes and what, let me tell you what other white people have told me about the people that they have to be involved with when they're doing some convincing. They say a lot of these folks are good people who acknowledge the bad things that have occurred, but they're scared to move forward because retribution may be coming. They may be coming to do to us what we did to them. You want to expand on that a bit?
Right. And what's so frustrating is that President Obama went out of his way to make it clear that he was not about retribution.
Right.
When you look at his speech, for example, after Reverend Wright in 2008, and his videos came out, and Obama made his famous and really amazing speech in Philadelphia, he talked about understanding that white Americans have problems too, that they may not feel privileged. And he made it very clear that he understood and empathized with them. And that's one of the reasons why he was able to win the election. He got a decent percentage of the white vote. That didn't matter to Limbaugh, right? Because Limbaugh is aimed at people in a closed universe, a closed media universe. He doesn't want them to know what Obama is really about. I do think that Obama was able to reach enough people, obviously, to win election and then win re-election. But Limbaugh's rhetoric, 8 years of it, did have an effect. It helped Trump. And again, Limbaugh wasn't the only one. Trump's own rhetoric had an effect to scare people about, and Limbaugh was more explicit about racial retribution than Trump was, of course. But Trump was talking about, Mexicans coming across the border, et cetera, et cetera. That's the great fear, is that if we, right, white conservative Christians, don't hold on to power, they'll, as Limbaugh said, they'll cut us down to size. And so it's a zero-sum game. It's up to progressives to do what we can to talk about these issues in terms of creating equality, in terms of creating justice, not replacing one form of oppression with another. We know that that's what our intent is.
Right.
But it's a matter of making sure that enough of people on the other side know, so that we win the elections. Because if we don't win the elections, then the old ways continue.
Absolutely. So that's a profound statement. We have to let folks know, one, it's not zero-sum game. Two, that it's not we want to replace, is we all want to partake of. Obama, the apologizer and appeaser. Is that... go for it.
Well, we talked about a little bit already. It connects to the anti-American president. This is a foreign policy focused chapter where I looked at Limbaugh's rhetoric about Obama. and a lot of these things tie together, being supportive of Muslim regimes around the world, of being anti-American in terms of not supporting American strength in military terms, again, apologizing for America. So the earlier chapter, was more domestic,
Right,
anti-American, and this is foreign policy.
I found it ironic that somehow many on the right attempted to use that word reparations. He's coming for reparations. He's coming to take what is yours. Remember, you worked hard for it. You weren't responsible for what happened to them. He's coming to take it away from you. Reparations. Ironically, while there are many who are for reparations, I don't once recall Obama during his presidency even using the word, but who am I?
Right. You are someone who is correct. That's who you are. Well, I should say, actually, let me get Obama did mention reparations, but only to argue that it was not an appropriate policy for the United States right now. So I assume that's what you meant.
Mm-hmm.
I have a section about Limbaugh talking about reparations. He brought up reparations all the time when it came to the Obama presidency on issues that had nothing to do with reparations specifically. In criticizing Obamacare, Affordable Care Act, he said this is going to be another form of reparations because presumably, the healthcare bureaucrats that Obama was going to hire would favor Black people in terms of getting healthcare over white people. I mean, Limbaugh said this.
Yes.
At one point, he even said Obama's entire economic program is reparations. Now, the only thing you could say is that progressive economic policies generally aim to help those below the median income line, or at the middle or below. And yes, they are disproportionately African American, Latino, Native American. Although overall, still the majority of people below the poverty line are white because the population is overwhelmingly about 2/3 white in America. Anyway, the point is to go from saying that those policies that are going to help people of color a bit more just because they're below the median, in large part because of past discrimination, to say that is the same as racial reparations is ludicrous. Racial reparations, as at least his audience understands it, and he wants his audience to understand it, would mean every white person writes a check that goes directly to Michael Jordan and Oprah Winfrey, and maybe support Black people too. Right? Did I say Michael Jackson? I meant Michael Jordan. Michael Jackson.
I know you. I know.
My condolences to the Jackson family.
I know that is funny, but okay, let's finish off with the because what I want at the end is a conclusion from you, because I think the issue of the most important part of this book is conclusion, and also what progressives need to do to mitigate the damage that was done by these guys. But let's first talk about how the immigration issue itself, how are they able to categorize that into what it has turned into?
Right. We know that Trump announced his candidacy by talking about Mexican rapists, and immigration remains at the core of Trump's rhetoric, and everything else connects to it. His very most recent tariff threat against Mexico is based on them somehow doing more to control the flow of immigrants, undocumented people coming across the border. This is the core of it. It's about cultural change. It's about demographic change. They talk about crime, even though we know that from statistics that undocumented immigrants commit crimes at a lower rate than the native born, and that having more undocumented immigrants in a town or city or county actually brings the crime rate down. But that's, facts, and facts don't matter to people who are interested in fear. But it is also about cultural change. Limbaugh used rhetoric that mirrored Trump, that presaged Trump. We also saw rhetoric, we see rhetoric like this from Tucker Carlson and other white nationalists on Fox. The example that I would like to bring up here, towards the end of Obama's presidency, there was a woman named Kate Steinle, who tragically, unfortunately, was killed. The bullet that killed her was fired by an undocumented immigrant who had a criminal record, who had been deported a few times and came back. He was ultimately found actually not guilty of murder. The evidence was that the bullet was fired accidentally. But that aside, Limbaugh and Trump both attacked Obama and the Democrats on this poor woman's murder. Limbaugh connected all of the race-baiting dots on this murder. So let me just read you a couple of short sections here. July 1st, 2015, just after Trump announced his campaign. This is when Kate Steinle was murdered. On July 7th, Limbaugh talked about the fact that Kate Steinle's name would, quote, never be as well known as Trayvon Martin's, end quote, and talked about the fact that President Obama would never deliver a eulogy at her funeral, implying incorrectly that Obama had delivered the eulogy at Trayvon Martin's funeral.
Exactly.
And connecting this back to the Black Lives Matter conversation, Limbaugh hammered Obama over and over and over again about having said that, oh, if I had had a son, he might have looked like Trayvon. To Limbaugh, this was Obama, again, as some kind of Black Lives Matter anti-white activist. So he's tying all of these things together. Obama doesn't care about the white woman murdered by the undocumented immigrant, but he cares about Trayvon Martin. This insidious network of white anxiety provocations is the kind of thing that he does to connect these issues connect the dots across these issues. And on Kate Steinle, he also talked about connecting these all together, that Obama hated America and wanted to alter its quote unquote composition in order to quote unquote change the face of the country, end quote. So this is also about demographic change. And he brought up the chickens coming home to roost, which again is Reverend Wright. Right? All they keep coming back. He lays the groundwork by talking about Reverend Wright and Trayvon Martin years earlier. Then when Kate Steinle comes up, he can throw those things back at his audience, and it just cements in their mind, boy, Obama really doesn't like us. He likes them. And that lays the groundwork for Trump to come along and talk about a lot of these same issues. Trump hammered the issue of Kate Steinle's murder on the campaign trail, and you can see the synergy between Limbaugh and Trump. And that's how you elect somebody like Donald Trump.
Well, I think, first of all, folks, we're talking about the book, The Tribalization of Politics by Ian Reifowitz. And let me just say, let me say something, because there are two parts to this book, as I see, the very small part and then the big part that gives all the illustrative examples, etc. But I think there is enough power in this book where maybe you should have had two. And the second one is, where do we go from here? And how do we un-tribalize American politics? So for 2020, how do we get enough on-tribalization to make a difference? And to because, look, I think, first of all, I think very few people agree with me here, but I think Donald Trump is on a path to win. I think if we do the right things, just short of what I think we need to do, we can pull off a marginal win. But what I would hope for us to be going for is not a marginal win, but a blowout, because the things that we have to recover from and the things that we have to do require that we break the tribalization spine so that we can actually start accomplishing things, because things continue to degrade. The student loans, the student debt, the disparity in incomes, all these things are cumulative. We have to start the retraction, and to do that, we have to start with people. We have to untribalize people again. Ian, how do we do it?
It's not going to be easy, but I agree with you that this has to be the goal. The definition of America that Trump has put forth cannot stand. I'm not saying that it has to be that Obama's America, that Obama gets all the credit for it, but he really did define America in a different way, and that's what's on the ballot here. So one of the things that we really need to understand is that there is data that can guide our campaign strategy as progressives. Some people have set up a sort of a false debate within progressivism that progressives should have a race-based message, or that progressives should have a class-based message. You can't have one and not the other. But the key is, and this is what the data has shown, there's data research done by Demos, which is a terrific organization. The scholar there is a gentleman named Ian Haney Lopez, who was a professor at Berkeley. He blurbed my book for full disclosure, but he's published some of these findings in the Washington Post. He looked at survey data, and he said basically the survey data found that if you explain, if progressives base a message in this way, that it really works. And the way is this: you can talk about conservatives race baiting, not And don't say, and they're bad because they're racist and vote against them because they're racist. But you say conservatives are race baiting in order to distract you, middle class and working class white voters, from the fact that they're stealing from you, right? There's a famous Lyndon Johnson quote. We know how to do this. There's a Lyndon Johnson quote, which I'll probably get a little bit wrong, but it basically says, if you can convince the lowest white man that he's better than the best colored man, he'll let you pick his pocket. Hell, he'll even empty his pockets for you. Right, that rhetoric still works. So what Demos found was that if you tell your middle class, your working class white voters, conservatives like Donald Trump or Rush Limbaugh, whoever, want to steal from you, but they can't tell you, vote for me, I'm going to steal from you. They can say, look over there at the angry black man. He's coming to get you. And he's telling you that so that you don't see him stealing from you. Right. So that message reaches to the middle class, these working class white voters, to say, we're on your side. They're not, but they're trying to distract you with the fire engine about Barack Obama and black radicals and chickens coming home to roost. But that message also reaches voters of color because it shows them that you as progressives understand that racial injustice is a serious thing. You're not pitching a race-blind, class-only message. You've got to connect the two. That's what will counter Limbaugh, because Limbaugh and Trump want to scare white people into seeing red, like, you put a red handkerchief in front of a bull, the bull just charges ahead. The bull doesn't say to himself, geez, that tax plan is really hurting me. He says, I'm just gonna charge ahead at that matador. But the tax plan is hurting you. It is hurting you, middle class and working class white voters. So don't take that bait. And we as progressives have to help them see that reality, that what the Trump Limbaugh people are trying to do is take from you, but convince you that other people are trying to take from you. In reality, a coalition of middle class, working class whites and voters of color, and all the people who are essentially not the Americans that the Republicans care about, should come together and vote against those Republicans. And that could be the kind of blowout you're talking about, 55%, 60%, who knows? If you could really get a coalition of the people who are disadvantaged, I don't mean disadvantaged in America, but disadvantaged by Republican policies, harmed by Republican policies. And then you can add to that the people who maybe are a little bit better off, but who have progressive political beliefs. You could combine all those groups. Maybe you've got a solid majority, enough to break that spine that you were talking about. That's my goal, and that's the message in the conclusion of my book.
Ian Reifowitz, The Tribalization of Politics. Folks, this is the book to get. I enjoyed it. Ian, I thank you for being with here. You have any closing remarks before we go?
I want to thank you for having me on and for giving me the chance to talk about the book. People can also follow me on Twitter at Ian Reifowitz, and you can see my writing at Daily Post as well, where I have Sunday posts, usually around an hour or two before or after Mr. Willie's posts, and we often feed off each other in terms of our ideas.
It was my pleasure to have you here, Ian. Thank you very much for writing a great book, and a book that's not made for just progressives, a book that's made for everybody. So folks, if you want a good read, if you want a read where you will learn something, please go ahead and get you a copy of The Tribalization of Politics, How Rush Limbaugh's Race-Baiting Rhetoric of the Obama Presidency Paved the Way for Trump. Ian, thank you so kindly. You have a wonderful day, my friend.
You too. Thanks, Egberto.
Friends, please click the button here. And well, you don't have to click any buttons there, because we are back live again with Politics Done Right. That is an interview I did with Ian a couple of days ago. And I tell you, is Ian, Professor Ian Reifowitz, great or what? This guy, he's a colleague at Daily Kos. We both write Sunday pieces on the front page of Daily Kos. And I mean, I learn a lot from the things that he writes. He's very, he knows the material, and not only does he know the material, he's empathetic with the current social structure. So I mean, it's important that I've suggested to many people that is a book to get. When I read through, if I were to read all of the books that people send me for getting on air, I would have time to do absolutely nothing. when I started reading Ian's book, it was like, oh yeah, right, and just kept on reading. And I tell you, I'm not the fastest reader out there, but it was a quick. It was a quick read because again, it was an enjoyable read. So check out his book, which is titled "The Tribalization of Politics." You can go to our blog, the blog for the show, and actually click on it to pick up his book. Now, the subject that I want to talk about today is something that I read, and you know, people, look here. We have a problem within parties, right? If you're a Republican and you criticize the Republican Party, people get on your case. Oh, you're a Republican, how can you criticize the Republican Party? Same applies to Democrats. You're a Democrat and you go ahead and you say something about the Democratic Party, people go berserk. Oh, what, you're just bringing down the party, you're going to cause us to lose. And then you have to ask yourself the question, what's the purpose of parties? The purpose of parties is promote in a group manner a particular ideology of a belief system that you all live by. In the case of the Democratic Party, we're talking about our platform, which is a very progressive platform, a pro-people platform, a pro-humanity platform, a pro-everybody stands a chance platform. That is what we stand for as Democrats. That is who we are. Now, there are several times, and I repeat this for those who've heard me say this before, forgive me, but I must say it for all the new people that we have that come in every single time. We get thousands of new listeners every week. You know, they may listen for a minute, they may listen for 10 minutes, they may listen for different times, but I want to get this out. Many Democrats get upset when I say there's a little bit of difference between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. And by that, I don't mean we, the Democratic rank and file, and those Republican rank and file. Even though most of those Republican rank and file, when you ask them about their wants and their needs, they should be on our side, the Democratic rank and file. But they're not. Ideological, cultural, there are a whole lot of things that prevents that from happening. But there's one thing special about these, the ideology, about the establishment of the parties. And it goes like this. I talk about the rail system. There's a left rail and a right rail. The Democratic Party generally represents that left rail, left of center. The Republican Establishment Party represents the right rail, the right of centers. That's how they like to tell people. That's how they describe themselves. In reality, let me tell you what we have here, people. And it's imperative that you understand this, so that you don't get on my case, or you don't get on the case. You don't get on the case of the Berniacs. You don't get on the case of the Elizabeths. You don't get on the case of the even the mayor from New York. All these progressives. You don't get on their case when they start critiquing. Here's the problem. If you find that the policies over the last 30 or 40 years since Reaganomics have been placed into the fold, if you notice that the policies have only changed on the margins, then it proves our point. There's a left rail and there's a right rail on a track. What do you think about Reaganomics? What do you think about supply-side economics? What do you think about voodoo economics? You think that's an all rightward moving system that really only protects or serves the wealthy, the plutocrats, the oligarchs, the corporations. We know that, right? I mean, all policies that we pass, the tax cut scam that just got passed, all that money went, most of that money, more than 75% went to the top 0.1%. And not only that, while they said we were going to get a lot of this money influxed back into the economy, what we got was a whole lot of stock buybacks, which did a magical thing, right? What did the stock buybacks do, people? I want you to learn a little bit of economics here. It is essential. It is necessary. Learn this for me, please, because what the right rail and the left rail, meaning the establishment parties, want you to do is not understand economics. And the reason they don't want you to understand economics is they can then The right can tell you something and you believe it if you're inclined to be Republican, and the left can tell you something and you'll believe it because you're inclined to be a Democrat. Here's the deal. When they give all this money to the wealthy with this last tax cut, right? If they had given that money in such a manner that these people got more income, really wage income, that would be paid as dividends or whatever, these people would have paid a high rate of taxes on it. But by giving these people the money in a manner then that allowed for this thing called stock buybacks, what that did to the wealth of a lot of people without even have to lift a finger is inflated their worth. Because if company A has 100,000 stocks and you buy back 20% of those stocks, the appreciation on that particular stock could be 20% or more. Meaning if I owned that stock, I'm immediately, as that company buys back more of that stock, I'm immediately wealthy. I don't even have to sell the stock. I'm immediately wealthy. I am worth that much more just from doing nothing. And guess what? For all practical purposes, all of that is tax-free. Zero taxes. Because I haven't cashed in those stocks to even pay the smaller amount that's called capital gains, which is less than the working man's income. I need you to understand this. Because when they're playing these games with you, they don't tell you what the machinations are. They don't tell you that we're doing it in this form so that those wealthy people would constantly pay less taxes. And then when we blow up the deficit and we have to loan money, these guys are just loaning us back the money that we gave them as tax cuts. So they make the money on the interest that they loan us the money for. They make some money on the appreciation of the stock from the tax cut that they got. And they make some money on the absolute tax cut that they got. It is amazing. I want to talk about the Common Dreams article. But I want you to understand, I'm coming to you right now, telephone. I want you to know this, people, brothers and sisters. They want you dumb. That's what the Powell Manifesto said. Let's go and infiltrate all the schools, the churches, everything. And then we were going to tell them what we want them to know. We're not even going to teach them civics to let them know that government is really we the people. And if government is bad, it is we the people that's bad. And that we have control over government. So we shouldn't look at government as something adversarial, but we should look at government as something that we are going to enter in and improve. Just like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez decided she was going to go into government even as an activist progressive and make things better. Just as Ilhan Omar went in and said, I am going to make things better. Rashid Tlaib goes in and says, I'm going to make things better. Ayanna Presley goes in and says, I am going to make things better. Young people who are starting to realize that government is we the people. So government isn't something we must fear. You see, that's what they want you to believe. Oh, fear government, that government's going to take over, government take over. Well, I kind of like government takeover of stuff. It means we the people take over of stuff. Government takeover of anything means we the people take over of everything. But they don't want you to make that correlation. So what they did, they said, remember, government is bad. And if you think government is bad, then you don't want to have government have more control. You don't want to have government have more control on corporations to prevent them from screwing you, which is what they're doing right now. Let me go ahead and get the call, and then we can come back to this discussion. Come on in, caller from 781. Come on in.
Hi, Egberto. It's Kathleen. How are you?
Kathleen, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Excellent, excellent. Talk to me.
Well, my comment is kind of unrelated to what you were talking about.
No problem.
But
it's your show.
I wanted to see what your thoughts are, because I am very unhappy.
Okay.
It was I first read about it yesterday. Jay Inslee, who's running for president, former governor of Washington State, I think. Okay. He apparently had written a letter to the DNC and asked them to have a climate change debate.
Right.
And So they wrote back to him and said they're not doing a single issue debate for climate change or anything else. But the part of which, okay, that upset me. But what upset me more was they also said that any candidate who participates in a grassroots-funded climate change debate from Extinction Rebellion or Sunrise Movement or a collaboration of all the grassroots groups in the country, if they got together and put on a climate change debate and invited all the candidates, the DNC will exclude any candidate who participates from further DNC debates.
I read it as well at Politico, and you're absolutely right. And by the way, you said when you just called in that had little to do with what we're talking about. That has everything to do with what we're talking about. Because what they are, let me tell you what happens, Kathleen. They don't want the climate debate because the climate debate means that it's going to, a lot of, the topic that I was going to talk about in a little bit was going to be about Nancy Pelosi designing a policy with the drug companies in secret, unlike what Doggett from Texas wants to do to expand and allow Medicare to negotiate and all these guys to negotiate for drug bills. Here's the deal. You're right. What they're scared of, and it's not that they're scared of. What happens is we are going to make Americans more intelligent again. And they cannot have that, because then Americans will start voting for the candidates that really are going to stop all this crap that's happening within our atmosphere, the climate change issues, etc. We will start, because when we understand the stark trouble that we are in right now with the climate, when we understand, people are going to act. And they don't want that right now. They want to keep everything nice, calm, and cool. They want to continue to get all the petrodollars. They want to continue to get all the pharmaceutical dollars. They want to continue to get all the insurance dollars. So they don't want to rock the boat. So they want to have these placé debates that are not really debates, where they get some moderators that are on the dole, ask questions that have little to do with what really affects the vast majority of Americans. So, Kathleen, you have every reason to be upset. And what I'm saying, I wish Inslee and a few other candidates would say this: to hell with the DNC. We are going to do these things. If you decide that you don't want to have us on the debate, on the same day that you have this debate, we will go on another channel and have a debate. Guess what's going to happen then? Some other channel is going to see that that's going to be a hell of a propaganda bonanza, and they're going to take it, and they're going to take it live, Kathleen.
Right, but the question is, who, if anyone, is going to stand up to the DNC? I thought Bernie was going to do it.
No, they're
but he
not.
didn't.
None of them are going to do it.
I don't know why. I can't read his mind. He's obviously a very intelligent man, so I'm sure he's not under the delusion that the DNC is on his side.
No,
I'm sure.
That's
he
not
realizes
why.
that.
Let me tell you what I think it is, Kathleen. And sorry to interrupt you, but since you asked, what I think it is the following. They don't know, and it's a legitimate question, right? If Biden had come out the door and not doubled up on Bernie would have been raising hell, and likewise Elizabeth Warren would have been raising hell. But the fact that they believe the polls that say Biden is so far ahead makes them believe that they have to be a bit more cautious with dealing with the Democratic base, the totality of the Democratic base, not the progressives in the Democratic base, but the totality of the Democratic base. Because what we have is, if we break down the numbers, if Biden has 36% and what's his name has 18%, Bernie has 18%, and Elizabeth has 8%, and Kamala has 8%. What we have there is, we have a danger in that the electorate right now believe in the fallacy that only Biden can go up against Trump. It's not true, but they're doing a good job at selling it. If you look at what MSNBC did today, as you know, Biden made a very huge faux pas when he decided to say, I am still in support of the Hyde Amendment. He said he's still in support of the Hyde Amendment.
Right.
Okay? He's the only candidate right now, as I recall, that is still in support of the Hyde Amendment. Normally, you don't have MSNBC refuting other candidates. You know what they came out and said today? Are the other candidates hypocritical? And then they start enumerating other candidates that at one time supported the Hyde Amendment. So they went and did Biden's dirty work for Biden.
Yeah.
That is the climate that I'm talking about. And that is likely a reason why you won't see Elizabeth Warren and Bernie will probably say that is not the right thing to do. But they're going to be careful until the polls start telling them that enough progressives are pissed off to get engaged. One of the things I am trying to do with our show, and you are trying to do, and all of us are trying to do, is tell progressives, let's start making sure that our voices are heard. Because if our voices are not heard, we get what we're seeing right now. When Nancy Pelosi comes out and said, it's only a minority that wants impeachment, it's only a minority that wants XYZ, you have to be cognizant of, both Republicans and Democrats that I talk to want impeachment, but somehow the polls don't say that. I don't know. You tell me.
Well, on that subject, I think this is where the Democrats fail repeatedly in comparison to the Republicans.
Absolutely.
Because the Republicans craft a message and they blanket the airwaves with the same message. And they drill it into your head until you believe it. And the Democrats they don't pass along information the same way the Republicans do. And they don't frame things to their advantage. Not all of them. Some of them are much more talented. But Nancy Pelosi is horrible at it. She's absolutely horrible at it. She may be a good politician, but I don't think she's a good leader. If she
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Huh?
No, go ahead, I'm sorry.
If she, let's put it this way, she has the power, and the Democrats have the power, that if they wanted the American people 60%, 70%, whatever, 60, let's go for 60, all the sane people left, then educate them. Educate them. Go hold a news conference, tell them what's in the Mueller report, remind them what's in the Constitution, in case they forgot, and tell them, listen, we took an oath of office, and I'm going to follow my oath of office, as are the rest of the House members, and we're going to launch an impeachment inquiry. And here's what that means. It means we get witnesses, we get evidence, we hear testimony, we do investigations, and we try to get a solid case and make sure we get the truth of the matter. And if we find that the president has committed a crime, we will vote to impeach him. You lay it out there for the American people. We're not all stupid. We can comprehend basic stuff. Even those of us who are, maybe more challenged than others. But, if she wanted to make the case, she absolutely could.
Now, you are absolutely right.
She's choosing not to.
Let me tell you, and she's not a foolish woman herself either. She knows exactly what she's doing. And what she's doing is she's protecting, and I don't, people hear me use the word plutocracy all of the times, and sometimes I know they get tired of it, but unfortunately, whether you get tired of it or not, it is true. Nancy Pelosi's first job is to be she is a backstop for the left, and what's his name is McConnell is the backstop for the right. Okay, in other words, they hold back the policies that we most want on the left, and the other guys hold back the policies they both want on the right. Unfortunately, though, those tracks, the left track and the right track, is moving to the right. So even as McConnell is protecting from the most extreme right folks, we are moving to the right. As far as the left is concerned, we don't really have somebody in power that's there pushing our cause. Every time we push a cause, think about this. Every time we push a cause that we know is fact-based, that we know is mathematically sound, we always have people to come back and throw a false right-wing Powell Manifesto type in it. And Medicare for All is my pet. And if you see what they do with Medicare for All, when you hear Senator Bennett, when you hear Senator Bennett or Klobuchar comes out and say Medicare for All is going to kick 180 million people off the health care they like, when you hear them say that that Medicare for All is going to increase your taxes, they're not lying. What they're not telling you, however, is that you will be better off and you will get better care. So instead of taking that true message and expanding on it to educate Americans, what they're doing is they're using the right wing disingenuous machine. And these are Democrats. My article on Sunday on Daily Kos is going to be tackling this, and I ask all of you guys to read the article that's on Sunday on Daily Kos, because this is exactly what we're going to be writing about, Kathleen. Anything else you want to add, Kathleen? We're almost out of time.
No, thank you so much, Egberto, for your thoughts.
Thank you so kindly, Kathleen. And you are absolutely right about the climate change thing. And what I think all of us needs to do, including yourself, myself, is send a note to the DNC saying we want that debate on climate change, and we want you to lift the prohibition of Democrats who decide they want to go on a forum discussing climate. So let's do that, my friend.
Yes.
Have a wonderful day, Kathleen.
You too, Egberto. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay, folks, I wanted to talk a little bit about the drug. So what's going on with the drug deal? Okay, so I'm going to just read a few things from Common Dreams. The title of the article at Common Dream is "Citing Fears of Americans Getting Screwed. Progressive Democrats Call Out Pelosi for Crafting Pharma-Friendly Drug Pricing Bill in Secret." Please go to Common Dreams and read that article. I'm just going to read the first few paragraphs. It said, amid concerns that the House Democratic leadership is crafting a drug pricing bill that is far too friendly to the pharmaceutical industry, progressives in Congress this week publicly called out Speaker Pelosi for writing the legislation in secret and ignoring those who favor a more aggressive approach to lowering out of control prescription drug costs. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat of New York, was among the progressive Democrats who spoke out Wednesday, telling reporters that the House Democratic leadership has left most members completely in the dark on the details of the prescription drug bill. That's a problem, and it's part of a pattern, I think, where we don't know things until 48 hours before, Ocasio-Cortez said, and then it's like you're either with us or you're against us. Folks, we have to take that very seriously. First of all, feel no pain, feel no passion, feel no admiration for these pharmaceutical companies. Remember that before they get the drugs, most of these drugs start out at universities that you pay for. And after you pay for it, they turn it over to the pharmaceutical companies who do a little bit of research and testing on it. And they claim they spend all this money on testing on these drugs. And then with that, they pill for you by charging you a ridiculous price that's much more than what it costs to develop the drug altogether. And remember, you paid for it. Technically speaking, if the government paid for the initial development of that drug, that means the government was an initial investor. What should happen, and I detail that in my article for Daily Kos, what should happen is then the government should be a permanent investor, and no matter what they decide to charge for that drug, a portion of that should belong to us as the initial investors, and eventually most of it should come to us after a certain particular time. We were the ones who invested in the drugs and developed the drugs. Once we transferred it to them, we have given away something to the private sector who satisfied just a few people, the investors in that company. None of this should be happening behind the scenes. What should be happening is, and by the way, the government has a clause when they transfer these technologies that were developed with government dollars to private companies. If they don't develop an acceptable drug that's priced where we can afford it, the government has the right to take it back, manufacture it, and then pay them a royalty. They have the right to do that. Never been exercised. What I'm saying, folks, is we allow these companies to dominate and take advantage of us under the purview or under the premise that that is how capitalism works. Folks, it doesn't work for you, and what it is a transfer of wealth from you to them. It is so important that we understand this. I got to leave now, but beforehand, I want to remind all my listeners, please, folks, consider subscribing to Politics Done Right. Go to patreon.com/Politics Done Right. Again, that is patreon.com/Politics Done Right. patreon.com/Politics Done Right. Keep this type of programming that is going to enlighten people beyond what you're going to hear on MSNBC, where you're not hearing the full story, so that you can make a qualitative and quantitative decisions based or decisions based on quantitative and qualitative issues. As Kathleen, who just called in, pointed out, we are behind the ball. As she pointed out, we have a DNC that is attempting to stifle not only innovate, stifle communication, stifle what we're learning, stifling what we know. We cannot have that. Please consider contributing to patreon.com, patreon.com/Politics Done Right, so that we can continue doing this work. It is imperative. Again, everybody who subscribe can read online, as I see it, Class Warfare, the Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, and, of course, my other book, which is Lose Weight and Be Fit Now, Say No to Snake Oil Weight Loss, and, of course, I'm writing How to Make America Utopia. Folks, I need you, or I ask you, I implore you to support programs like ours, because we are the last backstop to the complete and entire misinformation, or what we call processed information, just so that you know what you need to know to elect a particular sect. We don't want that. We want to make sure and elect those that are really going to be doing the things that we need to do for ourselves. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you know how I end this show. I am what? Out!
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.